Hi, everybody.
Welcome. This is the NBA Week 6 special recap. This is a special edition it's a spin-off, I'd say, I guess, of sports and shorts and sorts. My regular podcast that comes out every Monday, but I always got way too much NBA podcast stuff, so I'm like, shit, let's just do a weekly one on its own. Here we are. Welcome. Let's jump right back into it, guys. It was a little different this week than a lot of other weeks because we had the whole in-season tournament stuff going down. We had the quarterfinals, so there were some gaps in there. But usually I just jump division to division and let's start in the Atlantic, which is what I usually do here. And we'll start with the best team in the Eastern Conference. Going with the Boston Celtics. They went 1-1 this past week. They needed a late run to beat an Embiid-less Philly team, and then they'd lose to the Pacers in an exciting in-season tournament game. It was a really exciting quarterfinal. Really cool to see. The Celtics were up at half in that one, but the Pacers stormed back, got that crowd rocking. But Celtics have been without Kristaps Porzingis the last few games, but it's reported he should be returning soon. And yeah, with him in the lineup, this team is they're a contender. Even with him out, they're pretty damn good. But with him in there, they were looking really good. I think Jason Tatum should still be considered in that MVP conversation, even though we're having that conversation now. But Jaylen Brown's been really lighting up as well. I mean, he got that big contract he should be, but he's been playing really well. We'll go to Philadelphia. The Sixers went 1-1 this past week, losing that game to the Celtics I just mentioned, and then they'd face the Wizards. They'd get Embiid back for that one, and what a return he'd have, dropping a 50 burger in Washington. He'd also have 13 boards and 7 dimes to go with it, so they're obviously a different team with Embiid in the lineup. Like, the Sixers are a pretty good team without him, but with Embiid, oh, they're a title contender, and he just showed you why. I know it was the Wizards, but still, anytime you throw a 50 up in the league, whoop, whoop. We'll go to the Big Apple. The Knicks went 2-1 this past week. They went a close one over Detroit, and they follow up by beating the Raptors in Toronto. Then they'd have an in-season tournament game, a quarterfinals against the Bucks, and at halftime it'd be pretty close, but the Bucks would pull away from them in the second half, knocking the Knicks out of that in-season tournament. Julius Randle balled out in that game, though. We went for 41 points, but Jalen Brunson has been the man of consistency there. He's leading the team in scoring and in assists, and he's a big reason why the team's won 7 of their last 10. I think RJ Barrett still needs to step up a bit. He's not coming off what he did with Team Canada this summer. I was kind of expecting more things out of him, but season's still early and he was hurt a bit. We'll see what happens there. Sticking in New York, and we go to Brooklyn. The Nets went 2-1 this past week and currently rocking a 2-game winning streak. They lose a tight one at home to the Hornets. It was a good game. Cam Thomas returned at least from injury for the Nets in that one. And they'd follow that up by beating the Orlando Magic, ruining their 9-game winning streak. And who was the team that beat the Magic before they went on that 9-game winning streak? The Nets. So apparently, whatever they have, something against Magic, they're like some kind of religious group. They just hate Magic and they're beating them. But yeah, they'd follow that up by going into Atlanta and beating the Hawks. So yeah, it was a really back and forth game. Trae Young looked like to put the Hawks ahead, but Mikal Bridges clutch 32 points in that one and giving the Nets the win. The Nets, like I said at the beginning of the year, hard to read this team. They're after that big trade to get KD to Phoenix, and they broke everything up. It's like, what's this team gonna look like? And they're looking pretty good. Mikal Bridges, he's the man there, and with Cam Thomas back, this team could go on a run. It's very unpredictable, this NBA. But we'll go to the basement of the Atlantic. The Toronto Raptors, they went 0-2 this past week, losing to the Knicks, and then losing a tough one to the Miami Heat, where yeah, the Raptors just fell apart in the fourth quarter. They couldn't buy a basket. They were letting Miami get some. Pascal Siakam, he was the one shining spot for the Raptors against the Heat there. He had a big night, but yeah, this team's tough, tough to read. They beat the Suns one night. Now they go rock a 2-game losing streak, and I don't know if Darko is still trying to figure out the team as a new coach. I mean, he's a new coach in the NBA, right? Like, he's been assistant, but having the reins is different, and it's hard to read this Raptors team on what they're going to do. They have a lot of highs, a lot of lows. Siakam's been playing good of late, but Scotty Barnes, he's still playing inconsistent. His numbers are pretty good, but his consistency at a high level for the pick he was taken, he's got to, I don't know, it's asking a little much of Scotty B to do a little more, but can he do a little more? Going to the Central, we start with the leading Milwaukee Bucks. They went 2-1 this past week, and losing a shocker in the Chicago. Then they'd follow that up by beating the Hawks at home before, like I mentioned, beating the Knicks in that in-season tournament quarterfinal. So now the Bucks are in the in-season semifinals, and that's going on. This podcast is coming out today, Thursday. They're playing tonight, so they'll be hosting Indiana, which should be a shootout. There's no D in Pacers or Bucks in the spelling, and there won't be much on the court, I imagine, as well. Should be some high-scoring game. And yeah, when I saw the knockout bracket after they made it, after the group stage is finished, I originally had the Magic in my preseason predictions to win it, but they didn't make it to the knockout stages. So when I saw the bracket, I'm like, who's going to win this? I'm like, Bucks and Pelicans in the final. Pelicans are going to win it. So we'll see. That's why I think the Bucks will beat the Pacers tonight. Dame and Giannis has been a great pairing. It's six players in double figures, averaging double figures in points. So the Bucks are looking really good. We'll go to their rivals, who they're playing tonight, the Indiana Pacers. They went 2-1 this past week. Lose a shootout to the Miami Heat, only to win a rematch a few days later without Tyrese Halliburton. So how's that? But Halliburton would return for that in-season quarterfinal, and he'd ball out. That Indiana crowd was rocking. Adam Silver just going, excellent, because this tournament's looking good, you know? They got 8 guys averaging double figures, this Pacers team. At the beginning of the year, I said they'd surprise people like the Sacramento Kings did last year. They're making me look a little good on this front. It's kind of win-win for me in this tournament. I picked the Bucks to go to the final and play the Pels. But at the beginning of the year, I said the Pacers are going to be amazing. So either way, I might look good here. But I think this should be a pretty good game. And the Pacers, like I said, they're a fun team to watch. If you haven't been watching the Pacers, watch them. Said Tyrese Halliburton would come back from that Team USA experience and elevate his game. And he's doing that and then some. The Cavaliers sticking in the division. They went 2-1 this past week. They'd lose to a hungry Trailblazers team, but they'd follow that up by beating a struggling Pistons team. Then they'd flex on the Magic, beating them in Cleveland. So they went up early in that game against the Magic, never looked back. And this backcourt, man, they're just one of the best in the league. And against the Magic, Mitchell dropped 35, Garland 26. This team's playing right at the right time right now. You know, everybody's coming back. They've won 7 of their last 10. Cleveland, you don't want to play them right now. Going to the Windy City, the Chicago Bulls. Yeah, the Chicago Bulls went 3-0 this past week. 3-game winning streak. That's why I had to bust the Bulls jersey. Oh, it's a Derrick Rose one. It's an older one, but it's the only Bulls one I had. They'd win a tough OT game against the Bucks, I mentioned, where Alex Caruso would send it to OT with a big 3. Follow that up by beating a tough Pelicans team before beating the Hornets at home as well. So, strange little run for the Bulls. Even last episode, just talking about when's this team getting blowed up, when's Donovan getting fired, but they beat the Bucks with no DeMar or Zach LaVine. Then they'd win the next 2 with DeMar back in the lineup and still no LaVine. So, yeah, are these the final signs that LaVine will be moved? Like, they're winning without him. I know he's missing time due to injury. You never want to trade someone with injury, but his value can't be going up within the franchise because they're looking kind of better right now, winning without him. Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic have been stepping up in his absence, but yeah, we'll see what happens here in the next few weeks. He's going to be out, like I said, another 3 to 4 weeks, I believe, with his injury, so let's see what happens in Chicago. We'll wrap up the Central with the tough Pistons here. Oh, Detroit, I feel for you. 0-3 this past week, losing to the Knicks before losing to the Cavs and Grizzlies at home. This team looked pretty promising, you know, starting the season 2-1, but now they're on a franchise worst 18-game losing streak, and it's not looking good. Lately, there have been a lot of questions about the lineups that Monty Williams is throwing out there. They gave him all this big money to mold these young guys, and it's not looking too good right now. Seems like they're trying to find an identity. He's doing some lineup tinkering that maybe is affecting the confidence of some players. Ivy, who had a great rookie campaign, seems to be kind of lost, and he's on the bench, which he said he's cool with coming off the bench, but he doesn't really know his role. I don't know if lack of communication going on? Is there a disconnect between older coach and younger guys? Like Monty's not that old, but at least Bojan Bogdanovic is back. The veteran might help them get some W's. The shooter is a good scorer and maybe can help them in the fourth quarter, which, if you've watched many Pistons games, I don't know if a lot of people have, but in the fourth quarter, they really blow these games. So hopefully having another vet in there can help them end the streak. Because, yeah, 18, you don't want to hit 20-game losing streak because they're approaching. We'll go to the Southeast with one of the surprising teams of the year, the Orlando Magic. They went 1-2 this past week. They'd struggled to beat a Wizards team before getting blown out by the Nets, as I mentioned earlier, and ending their 9-game winning streak. And they'd follow that by losing in Cleveland, their second, like I said, in a row. Banchero balled out in that game against Cleveland, going for 42 points. But it's the thing when you're a hot, young NBA team and everyone's talking about you. Everyone's going to give you their best when they come out to play you. So I don't see this 2-game losing streak lasting very long. They'll turn it around, start winning again here. Next up in the Southeast, the Miami Heat. They went 2-1 this past week, winning, like I said, a big one against the Pacers, only to lose to the Pacers a few days later. And they beat the Raptors in Toronto. And Bam Adebayo would leave the game against the Pacers, the first of the two there. And he's been dealing with a hip injury. He'd missed the next 2 games following it. Hopefully he can return too, because he's been playing pretty good ball. But yeah, even with his absence, this Heat team just comes together. The Heat culture, as they say, just a big team effort. But Yame Yakas Jr., he won Eastern Rookie of the Month for November, and you could see why. The guy looked like a veteran out there. He's easily the steal of the draft. Like, it hurt him that he went to school for 4 years, I guess, compared to the one and done guys, because he's too old. But man, he's coming in a polished piece, and he's a contributor on this team. Great draft pick. So go to Atlanta from there, where the Players play. The Hawks went 1-2 this past week. They'd win a shootout in San Antonio against my Spurs with Trae Young dropping 45. And then they'd lose to the Bucks before losing a last-second shot to the Nets there. This team is just a little bit of a slump lately, winning with 3 of their last 10. I feel they're kind of like the Raptors in what they're doing here. You don't know who's going to show up. You know Trae Young's going to score, but DeJounte Murray hasn't been as consistent as he needs to be. I feel like, who am I to criticize Scotty Barnes or DeJounte Murray? But I feel like in their lineup with their role, they need to kind of step it up a bit here, at least be a little more consistent. But we'll see what happens with the Hawks there. Leaving Atlanta, we go to Charlotte. The Hornets went 1-2 this past week. They won that tight game in Brooklyn I alluded to earlier, with Terry Rozier and Miles Bridges is balling out. Then they would be in a dogfight at home but lose to the Timberwolves. And then their most recent game, a loss to the Bulls. You had Terry Rozier balling out again in a rare flashback game for Gordon Hayward, who looked really good. But without LaMelo Ball, it's going to be tough for this team going forward. I mean, they're out there fighting. They're doing what they got to do. And Terry Rozier has looked dynamite since coming back from injury. So, yeah, we'll see what the Hornets can do here without Ball going forward a little further. Wrapping up the Eastern Conference, go to Washington. The Wizards went 0-2 this past week, but the positive sign were they were at least in both those games, and against really tough competition. They'd lose by 5 to the Magic, and then they'd lose by 5 to the 76ers, where Embiid went nuts and dropped that 50 on them. But a few weeks ago, you were wondering, does this team even care? At least over the last few games, they're showing there's some care there. And at least the care should contribute to a win or two. And you got to give Kyle Kuzma props at least. He's having a career season despite a tough go in the win-loss column. But going to the Western Conference, we'll start in the Northwest with the surprisingly dominant Minnesota Timberwolves, like top-seeded team in the West. They went 3-0 this past week, beating up on the Jazz before winning that close one in Charlotte. Then they'd host Wemby and my Spurs, and Rudy Gobert kept his compatriot Wembanyama under wraps. He had 20 boards against the youngster, and it was a total team victory for Minnesota. This team has the full package, you know. They play really tough defense, and their offense is efficient. And they're playing as one, which is really big. This team, like I said it before, and we need to say it again. Chris Finch needs some Coach of the Year consideration. He's top in the West. We got to start saying that. I know he's not the biggest name, but we got to start giving that. Former Raptor assistant as well. But next up in the division, the OKC Thunder. They went 2-1 this past weekend. This past week, sorry. They would absolutely trounce the Lakers, and then they'd win a tough one in Dallas, but they'd go into Houston and lose to a tough Rockets team. Well, this team does have it all. You have an all NBA type player, SGA. Well, he is an all NBA player, as he was last season. They have depth at all the positions. They're a little thin up front, but like I said, deep everywhere. And speaking of thin person up front, Chet Holmgren, he took Western Rookie of the Month honors for November. He's been something to watch. Offensively, defensively, he's going at you. If you go to dunk at him or lay it up, get that garbage out of here. That's like he's going to be taking Rookie of the Year if he continues this. Wemby has to step it up compared to that, but still haven't heard much on the Josh Giddey situation. Don't know what's happening there. He has still been playing. Pardon me. Okay, then we go to the Mile High City, defending champion Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets went 1-2 this past week, winning a tough one in Phoenix before dropping a tough one in Sacramento. They then go to LA and take on the Clippers and just have a disastrous fourth quarter, leading to another loss. And this team's kind of been working Jamal Murray back into the lineup, coming back from injury, but Jokic is putting up insane numbers. Just MVP type numbers, as he's already got 2 in his trophy case. And I don't see this team being on a losing streak very long here. They'll turn it around. Next up, the Utah Jazz. They went 1-2 this week. They'd have that loss to Minnesota before picking up an overtime win over the Trailblazers. And then they just get the shorts beaten off them by the Mavericks. They'd lose by 50 in that one. Very ugly. You want to get that one out of the memory bank and lose that. They've been playing without Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson the last few games, so that's a big reason why maybe they lost by 50 there. But Colin Sexton has stepped up big off the bench, putting in big scoring and giving some leadership there. At least they're seeing what their young guys are capable of with these injuries and, see who they want to keep going forward. It's a good way to show out for your next contract. Wrap up the Northwest with the Portland Trailblazers. They went 1-2 this week, winning a big game in Cleveland against the Cavs, but then they'd lose that OT one to the Jazz. But they go into San Francisco and lose a tight one to the Warriors. And the big thing in that Warriors game was the return of Anthony Simons. He's been out all year, basically. This was only his second game of the season, and he dropped 28. And Shaden Sharp's been on a tear as well. The London, Ontario native has potentially the dunk of the season. If you want to YouTube it or whatever, look up the dunk on Walker Kessler. It is filthy. We'll go to the division of death here. Good teams galore. Start with the Lakers. They went 2-1 this past week. They were blown out by the Thunder in Oklahoma City, but they bounced back nicely, beating a tough Rockets team where LeBron and Rockets coach Ime Udoka got into it a little bit before Udoka got ejected, but the Lakers would take that for winning a thriller in Phoenix in the in-season tournament final game, or quarterfinal. Austin Reeves hit a massive shot, but then they throw it into him, and it looked like he was going to turn it over. He had the ball drop, looked like Phoenix had the turnover, but LeBron had signaled for a timeout. Refs gave it to him. The replay didn't look very good. It didn't look like Reeves had it, but the league said he held the ball against his leg, which counts as possession. I don't know. I think it was a brutal call, but hey, that's how she goes sometimes. The Lakers held on. They're meeting the Pelicans tonight in that in-season tournament semifinals game. LeBron, I don't know how he's doing it. 21st season, and it's just insane what he's doing. So kudos to him. We have to witness it, and let's not take it for granted. Next up, the Sacramento Kings. They went 1-1 this past week, beating the defending champion Denver Nuggets before losing to a tough Pelican team in that in-season tournament quarterfinal match. But yeah, it's this team every night. De'Aaron Fox shows what he is one of the best, if not the best, scoring point guards in the league here. Malik Monk is still looking like a solid choice for Sixth Man of the Year. Kings, I think they are starting to turn things here. They struggled a bit, but with Fox returning to the lineup as he has, they're a tough out for anybody. Going to Phoenix, talk with the Suns. They went 1-2 this past week, dropping one to the Nuggets at home, but following that one up with a win over the Grizzlies before losing that tight game in the in-season tournament to the Lakers with that controversial call that immediately after the game, Booker shared a screenshot on Instagram. I don't think he took it very well. But yeah, we need to see what Bradley Beal can do on this team. He's been out forever. So we want to see what the ceiling is for the Phoenix Suns. Because right now, I don't know, they look pretty good. And we want to see when Beal, it's probably take time to get into the lineup there and work his way to playing with his teammates. But this is a team you don't want to play in a playoff series. You never want to play against Kevin Durant in a playoff series. He's so damn good. But Going back to LA, we'll talk Clippers this time. They went 2-1 this past week. They lose a tough one in Golden State, but they beat them in a rematch, beating the Warriors in LA a few days later. They follow that up by beating the defending champion Nuggets. This team's starting to look potent offensively. You're not just seeing 30 points by one guy each night. You're starting to see multiple 20 points and close to 20 points by multiple players. And this Clippers team's trending in the right direction. Ty Lue has them doing the right things. He's finding his lineups here. Can't praise Russell Westbrook enough, though, for going to the bench. You know, he took the pressure off Lue to have to bench a Hall of Famer by saying, I'll do this. We'll figure it out, and they're figuring it out. I had some doubts after the Harden acquisition, but seeing how they're sharing the ball and they're playing together there, you don't want to play that team once they get clicking. And we have to give a shout out to Daniel Tice as well, that backup center. It's not always the sexiest position in the NBA, but what he's brought to this team, it's massive. You know, he's filling in big there for the injury to Plumlee that went down early. And still in the Pacific basement, Golden State Warriors. Still weird to say that, but it's wild to think if the play-in matches started today for the playoffs, the Warriors would be on the outside looking in. And they did go 2-1 this past week, winning one and losing one to the Clippers before taking down the young Blazers. And Steph Curry continues to do Steph Curry things, but a lot of inconsistency on who's the number two guy each night, you know? Digging the extended minutes to Moses Moody. I was suggesting that last episode. And rookie Brandon Podziemski out of Santa Clara, he's surprising me, you know. Sarge Kuminga eats sometimes. They're the second guy. But the big thing, Klay Thompson averaging 15 and a half a game and Andrew Wiggins 12 a game. Like, this is not a title team with those guys doing that. Curry can't do it all. So we'll see what Kerr has to do to get this team going. Maybe just play the youngsters more. I don't know. Do you bench Klay Thompson at this point of his career? I don't know. Wrapping up in the Southwest, we had the big D to talk Mavericks here. They went 1-2 this past week. Luka would miss the game against the Grizzlies while he would be present for the birth of his child, and the Grizzlies would take advantage of that, beating the Mavs. Then Luka would return to the next game against OKC, but Kyrie would miss that one, and the Mavs would lose that one too. And I guess they took that anger out on the poor Utah Jazz, crushing them by 50. But yeah, Luka continues to put up MVP numbers. Kyrie's playing excellent. And Tim Hardaway Jr., he wants to battle out with Malik Monk for Sixth Man of the Year. A lot of people are saying Austin Reeves in there too, but I think those guys are still above him in the Sixth Man of the Year award. Granted, it's still early. We soared to the Bayou to talk Pelicans, and Pels went 2-1 this past week, crushing my Spurs before dropping one in Chicago. But they bounced back and look amazing in that in-season tournament quarterfinal against the Kings in Sacramento. And that's why they take on the Lakers tonight in that in-season tournament final. Should be a dandy. And the Lakers have looked inspired in this tournament. They're still undefeated. But when I saw that knockout bracket, I said Pelicans over Bucks. So I'm expecting the Pelicans to win tonight. And expecting them to win the final on Saturday. So we'll see what's up. CJ McCollum's back, Trey Murphy's back, and Jose Grand Theft Alvarado has been back for a bit. And these changes to the lineup are huge. It's like a whole new team. I feel a bit for Dyson Daniels and Jordan Hawkins. Those youngsters were playing well, and that rookie Hawkins is shooting really well. But those extended minutes early on will help later on. I think they're ballers, and they're going to make some big plays for this team in big moments. You watch. Houston, we don't have a problem. The Rockets continue to be one of the big surprises of the season. They went 1-1 this past week, losing a tough one to the Lakers, where, as I mentioned earlier, Ime Udoka would get ejected for getting into it with LeBron. But the Rockets would bounce back, beating a tough OKC team. And this team is just really good and young, Alperen Sengun continues to shine. Jamari Smith, his overall numbers are down a bit, but his percentages are up. And he even grabbed 18 rebounds in that game against OKC. These young guys under Udoka are realizing their roles. They need to play on the floor, and the continuous growth is scary for the rest of the league. Walking in Memphis, the Grizzlies went 2-1 this past week. They beat the Luka-less Mavericks in Dallas before losing a tough one to Phoenix in the desert. Then they'd go into Detroit and take a win. Well, I mean, everyone's been doing that lately, but Desmond Bane balled out against the Pistons. 49 points. He's so close to being talked about in the 50-point era, but 49, that's still a damn good game. 6 boards, 8 assists to go with that. Despite all the key pieces missing from this lineup, they're continuing the fight for Taylor Jenkins. And, we're at the 20-game mark, so that means just 5 more games. And Ja Morant can come back from his suspension, so that'll be exciting. But wrapping up the team breakdowns here, I'm almost having a team breakdown. My Spurs 0-3 this past week, now a 15-game losing streak. It would be the longest in the league, except Detroit's got that 18-game skid. Spurs lost that close one to the Hawks I mentioned before getting blown out by the Pelicans. And they'd be in the game a bit with the Timberwolves, but they'd pull away and never look back. So it's been rough to watch, you know. Wemby struggled a bit as of late. He's watching Chet Holmgren get all these accolades, Rookie of the Month honors, and hopefully they can turn it around. I don't know how the Jeremy Sohan point guard experiment's going with Pop here, and you know he was coming off the bench against the Wolves last game, so I don't know. A lot of tinkering issues going on, just like the Pistons. You know, two veteran coaches, Williams and Pop, just trying to figure it out here. Or maybe you just get scrutinized a little more when you're on such a long losing streak. But regardless, this team needs to start winning again. It's you gotta help the confidence of the youngsters a little. But that's a recap, yo. How's your team looking? I've been talking a bit about the in-season tournament. I'm happy it's finally getting the love it deserves. I was giving it love before, like it's gonna be a good thing, guys. And the players are leaving it all on the floor. You know, the atmosphere is great. Fucking when I saw the bracket, like I said, I picked Pelicans and Bucks. The Pelicans winning it. So let's see it happen. See Zion have a big night tonight against LA, or it'll probably be one of the guys I mentioned that came back. Jose Alvarado will be an antagonist or something, and we'll see what happens. And the Bucks Pacers game will probably be like 148 to 140 or something stupid, but it'll be exciting. And then let's talk some stats. Big 50 burger for Joel Embiid against the Wizards there. He leads the league in scoring at 33.1. Luka, KD, De'Aaron Fox, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all averaging over 30 points per game. Nikola Jokic leads the league in rebounding at 12.9. Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis, and Joel Embiid just behind him. Then Tyrese Halliburton, the stud who could make me look like an idiot tonight if the Pacers beat the Bucks. But yeah, he's continuing to lead the league in assists, 11.9. Trae Young just behind him at 10.6. And you have two guys sneaking up to the double digits as well, with Jokic and Fred VanVleet just under the 10 mark. SGA continuing to lead the league in steals, and Anthony Davis and Brook Lopez tied for shot block league. Now we'll go to the Rencity top 5. You know, there hasn't been a week where it's been exactly the same, and this is no different. Minnesota Timberwolves have them moving up to number 1. Boston Celtics number 2. Milwaukee Bucks number 3. OKC Thunder 4. And the Orlando Magic number 5. Timberwolves went undefeated this past week, and they've looked good doing it. Like I mentioned earlier, need to have Chris Finch in that Coach of the Year talk. Celtics stay at number 2, still a title contender. You could see it stung a bit when they got knocked out of that tournament by Indiana, but they're still a damn good team. The Bucks have been looking good as of late, moved their way back into the Rencity top 5. Like I said, I expect them to beat the Pacers and advance to the final on Saturday, the in-season tournament final, that is. And yeah, maybe they'll move up the list even more, I guess. I have the OKC Thunder coming back in the top 5 as well. They beat a Mavericks team, which knocked them off the list, and they've been playing some good ball despite that tough loss to the Rockets. The Magic went from 1 to 5, but that's what happens when you're on a 2-game losing streak. But Magic are going to bounce that back right away. They're so good offensively and defensively. Talking MVP here, I think it's a 4-horse race between Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis. But there's a 5th horse lurking. Like I mentioned last episode, Anthony Edwards, he's got to be in this talk a bit. If the Timberwolves are leading the Western Conference at the end of the season, we got to say that. SGA and Tyrese Halliburton, they got to be getting some votes as well. I don't know if Halliburton's going to have enough wins at the end of the year to get that, but we'll see. SGA's got to have his name in that combo. Talking rookies, Chet Holmgren, I mentioned him a bunch earlier. He's got to be the clear favorite now for Rookie of the Year. With Wemby and the Spurs struggling as much as they are, it's hard to give accolades when you're on a 15-game losing streak, but these times hopefully make the rookie stronger. And I still got to mention Yame Yaquez Jr. winning Rookie of the Month for the East and the Miami Heat. He's looking like a steal of the draft class. Just looks, like I said, he looks like a veteran out there, not a rookie. But hey, guys, 6 weeks in the NBA season. It's been great. The tournament's been really fun. Looking forward to seeing how the semifinals wrap up tonight, how it all ends up in Vegas. It's going to be really cool, I think. And Yeah, lots going on. Lots of cool college hoops going on. I know you didn't hear that here, but if you want to hear college hoops or get a wrap up of a sports week, catch my regular podcast, Sports and Shorts of Sorts. Comes out every Monday. I'm Rencity. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the hoops tonight. Enjoy it for the week. Good ball coming up in Vegas. Should be exciting. So thanks again for coming out, guys. Rencity out.